Илонка, иди сюда.
Они отходят. Что это такое, блядь? Это такое, блядь?
Привет.
Привет.
Что делаешь? Походу, что город похуяли. Ты на Белгород хуяли, четко, блядь.
А что она так не...
Да. Это пиздец.
US-led military bloc should neutralize Russia's exclave of Kaliningrad, ex-NATO commander. Former NATO Supreme Allied Commander James Stavridis has suggested that the US-led military bloc's members should neutralize Russia's westernmost exclave of Kaliningrad if Moscow seriously endangers the security of the Baltic states. Kaliningrad belonged to Germany until the end of World War II, when it was handed over to the USSR under the Potsdam Agreement. It remained part of Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and after several consecutive waves of NATO expansion, found itself completely surrounded by the bloc's members. The op-ed for Bloomberg, as Russia was celebrating the 79th anniversary of victory over Nazi Germany, Stavridis outlined his views of Kaliningrad as the last remaining nuance that prevents the Baltic Sea from turning into a NATO lake. A glance at a map shows that it's largely but not completely true. The coastline has a couple of slivers of Russian territory. The rest of the coastal littoral is in NATO hands: Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Germany and Denmark. The retired US Navy Admiral and former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO wrote, Stavridis praised last year's Baltic operations exercise as a demonstration of how NATO could use its Baltic Sea forces across the spectrum of naval activity to send an ominous signal to Russia. Look for NATO to use its Baltic Lake to put pressure on tiny Kaliningrad, which acts as a geographic wedge between NATO's Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, and the rest of the alliance, Stavridis wrote. In the event of war, Kaliningrad will need to be neutralized, so Russian land forces likely operating north through Moscow's vassal state Belarus cannot take control of the critical Suwalki Gap. The Suwalki Gap is a narrow strip of land between Moscow's ally Belarus and Kaliningrad that runs along the Lithuania-Poland border. In the wake of the Ukraine conflict, NATO's Baltic members have limited overland traffic between the Russian mainland and Kaliningrad under an EU embargo. However, they stopped short of imposing a full blockade, as some analysts have suggested severing Russia's access to its own territory could, to some extent, be considered a casus belli, a cause for the declaration of war. Russia moved to a new concept of war. Expert pointed out the nuance in attacks on Ukraine. The Russian occupiers switched to classical, modern, network-centric, non-contact warfare. This opinion was expressed by aviation expert, leading researcher of the State Aviation Museum of Ukraine, Valery Romanenko. The war is on the front line, but the main task is to destroy the infrastructure of the control system, industry and the transport system of another state. The one who implements this first wins the war. The Russians are now trying to put this concept into practice. They are using the means intended for this: long-range missiles, both ballistic and aero-ballistic, cruise missiles, drones, he said on the Espresso TV channel. The expert noted that the Russian Federation struck not only power plants, thermal and hydroelectric power plants, the occupiers also struck Stry in the Lviv region, next to which gas storage facilities are located. That is the gas transportation system, or Our gas reserves are already under attack, says Romanenko. He added that the Russian invaders cannot do anything to the Ukrainian armed forces and therefore want to take it out on the civilian population. Before, the Russians did not shoot at the gas transportation system because its allies in Europe, in particular in Hungary and Slovakia, receive gas through Ukraine. At least they did. I don't know how it is now. The Russians now want to take it out on the civilian population. The only thing is that they forgot that our rear is Europe and the United States, summed up Valery Romanenko. Recently, the head of Ukraine's national energy company has called on EU countries to help protect its natural gas storage facilities from a recent spate of Russian attacks so they can keep contributing to lower prices across the continent. Oleksiy Chernyshov, chief executive of state-run Naftogaz, said it is of interest of the EU to protect storage, transportation and production facilities, given that Ukraine's gas infrastructure is well integrated into Europe's energy system. Naftogaz said gas storage sites in western Ukraine had come under attack several times in recent months, but only above-ground facilities had been damaged. Underground storage tanks, which may be as deep as 3 kilometers beneath the surface, had remained unaffected, it said.